16 for 33. 207 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception, QBR 59.5. 13 carries, 65 yards. 2 receptions, 39 yards. 2 receptions, 22 yards. 1 for 3 in field goal attempts. Ladies and gentlemen, your 2024 Baltimore Ravens. I don't know, David, but I think your boy, Mike T, very well just might own the Baltimore Ravens. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Boardman Black and Gold podcast. What say you this, David? What do you say to that?
I say he, without a doubt, owns Lamar Jackson. It's just ridiculous. This was just ridiculous. This is like the best offense that Lamar has been a part of. Arguably, 2019 might have been better, but, they were on a hot streak, and everyone was talking about their offense. And, oh, my goodness, we made them look like – we just brought them right back down to earth. Mike Tomlin has Lamar's number. It was crazy seeing the statistics, just how bad Lamar is against us. And it was awesome. It was awesome to see, you literally heard me say it last week where I was like, I hate to even say that he's an MVP candidate, but he's the front runner. Not anymore. We definitely just took that right back out and reminded me who he actually is, and that's why I think we're so low on him, is because he plays so bad when we watch him.
Yeah, he does. And I don't know what about it, but it's just that Mike Tomlin knows how to beat him, and it doesn't seem like anybody else in the league knows how to beat him. His record against everybody else is staggering. Now, in the playoffs, it's a little bit different, but in the regular season, the Steelers just own him. He can't do anything against the Steelers, and it's interesting because Mike Tomlin came out and said that Justin Fields was a big part of the preparation this week, that their preparation this week was very intentional, and Justin Fields was a big part of that, and we kind of figured that that was the case, but Justin Fields has been with us just this year. Even without Justin Fields to simulate Lamar Jackson, we still beat him, which is crazy. You're the football brain among the two of us. How do we keep doing it? How? I don't understand.
I don't know what Tomlin works up or what they work up, but they just know, they just got his number. For one, it wasn't like he was getting sacked every play or there was consistent pressure, but I don't know if he ever threw it to his first read. So they must just be able to watch film and be like, all right, we know exactly what Lamar wants to do when he gets the ball and where he wants to throw it. And yes, our D-line plays a huge part in how bad he plays, but this game, honestly, I really just noticed how, he had nowhere to go with the ball, all the time. And, there were moments where he could have ran and he didn't, and then he just made some horrible throws. We really were just getting after him, and I think that our guys on the D-line were so disciplined in, not completely leaving your line that he couldn't really scramble most of the time. And so, you take away his first read and then his ability to scramble, what else can he do? Not much. And I think that is kind of their key, is don't let him run and stop his first read. And I think that they did it masterfully today or on Sunday and every time we play him.
I feel like that's a very simple formula. Set the edge, don't let him run. He didn't really run. He ran for, I think around 40 yards against us, but again, it's Lamar Jackson, and I think the only time that he really broke off a huge run was right after they played Renegade, right at the very end of the game, ironically. Yeah. So that was something else. But even when he was trying to create time, the secondary held up behind him, and he made, the Steelers made him look stupid just running around like that. He did not look comfortable at all. Even in the beginning of the game when the feel of the game hadn't even really developed yet, he just does not look comfortable against the Steelers. And it's just crazy how, it has to be mental at some point, right? You think so?
Oh, absolutely. I think it definitely plays a part. I was gonna actually point that out. I mean, he plays so bad against us that's got to sit with him, and that's got to, bring up past events. Like, people have been talking, I've even mentioned it, just how, like, he's throwing pretty precise this year. Like, he's not doing the normal Lamar, like, whoa, that was horrible. But this game, there were some passes where it was just like, oh my goodness. There was, like, guys sitting wide open, and it was like, oh, wow. Like, that was bad. And so I think that you're absolutely right, especially being at Pittsburgh, just gets into his head. And I love it. I love it that we own him, and it's awesome.
Well, so, and then another new character to this Steelers-Ravens rivalry is Derrick Henry. And we talked about it last week that we've held him to 75 yards in both of the games that he got normal touches against us. And now he got 65 this week with only 13 carries. It might be a little bit misleading because he did have 5 yards a carry, but the huge fumble to start the game, Nick Herbig coming out of nowhere, it's pretty incredible how well that we rise to the occasion when we play these guys. Like, I mean, Derrick Henry is the best running back in the league. Lamar is the best quarterback, arguably, in the league, even coming into the game. Now that has kind of shifted to Josh Allen after he beats the Chiefs, but the Steelers rise to the occasion when they play these really good guys for some reason. And, I mean, Derrick Henry, I mean, what do you make of him? Like, how did we find a way to beat him?
Early on, we kind of had his number. And, like, with that fumble, that was just awesome. Like, just getting into Henry's head. And then, kind of like how you mentioned, he's never had over, like, 75 yards against us. Even though I was surprised how little they used him. Even, like, this is towards the end of the game, but that 2-point conversion, he wasn't even on the field. Like, that was just horrible. And I think that they definitely underused him. However, I would say for the majority of his runs, he really didn't get much. There was the one run that went for, like, 20, maybe 25 yards. That, was like, oh, that's Derrick Henry. And then the 1-yard touchdown run is like, if you get Derrick Henry the 1 yard, there's not really much you can do. But I'd say overall, we didn't give him much. And, oh, my goodness, one of my favorite plays was T.J. Watt, unblocked, coming off the edge and just lighting Derrick Henry up. And, honestly, that was pretty late in the game. I don't really remember Henry getting a carry after that. Like, I don't I don't know if that just completely shut him up, but yeah, we had him kind of all game besides a couple of runs that were like, okay, well, he got loose there. But I think that we controlled him well. They could have given the ball to him more, but I don't really know what was going on. I would say we'll probably get to him a little bit more, but the middle of the defense this week, specifically Patrick Queen, and, shout out Peyton Wilson, too. Yeah. They were on fire, so I think that was a big part of it.
Yeah, the linebackers, they came to play this week. I mean, that Peyton Wilson interception, like, how is that possible? And the funny thing is, too, I don't know if you know this, but rookie Devin Bush, he had a very similar type of interception against the Ravens.
Yes! Oh, my gosh. Against it was Mark Andrews who was trying to catch it.
Yeah.
Yeah, oh my gosh, you completely jogged my memory. I remember that. So I was at that game.
No way. Were you really?
Yeah, I was, because we were at home, and I remember we lost, but I was at that game. That was awesome.
Wow. How about that? I mean, carbon copy of it. Like, they're both in the air, they're both going to the ground, and he finds a way to stick his hand underneath of the arm and just rips it away. Like, it's crazy to be able to do that in such a short amount of time. And to, like, have the ball, like, it blows my mind how that's even possible. And that's accredited to Lamar, but you're itching to say something. What were you going to say?
I was going to say, just shout out, another one to Peyton Wilson. Like, you look at the beginning of that play, he is beat.
Yes, he was.
And he, like, not only, like, most guys, it's like, all right, take that as a loss, let him catch and make the tackle. But he's like, no. And I'm gonna put even more effort in, get close to him, and rip the ball out of his chest. Like, that was just an insane amount of effort to a play that looked like it was going to be bad to a unbelievable turnover. Like, that's the best play he's made without a doubt thus far.
Well, it's crazy too, and I think I told you guys this. I was watching him the entire time because he was following Justice Hill. He was kind of the spy on Justice Hill, and Justice Hill was in motion like a bunch of different times pre-snap. And I'm thinking to myself, man, he's just running around. And then, like you said, he gets beat on that play. I mean, Justice Hill, I think, had a couple of steps on him at least. but he just never gave up, and that's that grittiness. NC State Wolfpack, love the Wolfpack, Awa Awa, all that type of stuff. Like, he might be the steal of the draft. And another thing that I wanted to point out, do you know what pick we drafted him with? Or do you know something very specific in terms of his pick that is associated with us? How did we get that pick, do you think?
So I guess we traded for it.
Who did we trade to get that pick?
Did we trade with the Ravens? Is that what you're leading up to?
No. Something far sweeter even. We traded Kenny Pickett to the Eagles to move up from the 4th round to the 3rd round to get Peyton Wilson.
No way. That's without a doubt worth it. Oh my goodness.
Oh, it's so sweet. It's so sweet.
Yeah, that's awesome. I've completely forgot about that. What a trade and what a pick, and it could have been a better time for him to, make the play of the year for him.
Yeah. And then again, you talked about Patrick Queen for a second. I mean, that was the Patrick Queen that we signed in the offseason. He
Absolutely.
Was explosive, he was hitting guys hard, and he was in coverage a couple of times too, and he was step for step with these wide receivers. And you talked about it, how a lot of those tackle for loss and a couple of those sacks on Lamar, I mean, those are coverage sacks. I mean, that is the secondary playing up to the standard of the wide receivers, and Patrick Queen was in there a bunch of times too. So, I mean, hats off to Patrick Queen. I hope that he sees this game and sees how much he's loved by Steeler Nation, because I would love to have him around for a very long time.
Oh, absolutely. I love it. Yeah, he was on fire the whole game, and the forced fumble recovery right before the second half to get those 3 points, just insane. Like, that's just an insane play by him, and it was so awesome to see. And I love how aggressive he is. It took me a while to decide whether or not I liked it, because there are times, even in this game, where I noticed, he was very aggressive on that play, kind of left his zone open, but I like it. I like being aggressive rather than just sitting back there. And, yeah, he's awesome. This was definitely his best game thus far also. And, yeah, I think Steeler Nation is in love with him, and I couldn't agree more that I would love to have him for as long as possible.
All right, so the defense obviously had an incredible game, holding this historic offense. I mean, the Ravens were on pace to break NFL records in terms of team offense this year, and the Steelers held them to 16 points. They had the big stop at the end, and something you said about that 2-point conversion at the very end of the game, the play itself was a broken play, and I wonder, because you and I had some discourse about the whole John Harbaugh debacle that we had in our Outside Perspective episode. And I wonder, and it's just so interesting, does John Harbaugh just overthink these games? Not having Derrick Henry on the field? I mean, as much as we might be in Lamar's head to where he's seeing ghost, do you think that Mike Tomlin is in John Harbaugh's head as far as him seeing ghost too?
But I think that's a great point, because now he's 8-1 in this recent stretch. Harbaugh's 1-8, and I think that's a good point. I think that he knows, this is like Michigan versus Ohio State. Like, Ohio State or Michigan could be 11-1, but if that one loss is to Michigan, you could get fired. And I feel like it's the same exact mentality with these guys, where, obviously it's a little different because Harbaugh is still here and being successful, but I think that besides playoffs, these are the most important games of the year, every year, and you have to win these games. And I think Harbaugh's starting to feel that pressure, and he definitely feels it more now. And so I think that he probably does think that he's got to go for broke and do whatever he can to win these games. And I love it. I love that he's scrambling, and he's going to be scrambling even more, and it'll be interesting to see. But I do think that's a good point that you make, and I do think he definitely is also starting to get in his own head.
I mean, again, not having Derrick Henry on the field and a 2-point conversion, even if you don't give him the ball, you have to respect him if you're the defense. So at least that creates something. But the fact that he's not even on the field, that doesn't make any sense to me. And
No.
You can point to a lot of decisions throughout the course of the game and whatnot, but it just seems like in in these Ravens-Steelers games, John Harbaugh just outthinks himself. And Mike Tomlin sticks to a very simple game plan, a game plan that's worked, and he doesn't deviate from it. And he allows essentially John Harbaugh to beat himself. And it seems like that's the case. And even Ravens fans seem like, oh, there's another game where John Harbaugh just beat himself. The only team that can beat the Ravens is the Ravens. And, I mean, it was on full display this week.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And it's kind of crazy how dominant we've been, just like defensively being able to shut down their offense year in and year out. And like they've changed things up multiple times throughout this 8-1 stretch the Steelers have had, and it's never worked against us. So it'll be interesting to see kind of the aftermath of this. It'll be interesting to see the rest of the Ravens season, how it pans out, and then the aftermath. Because I think that this, I hope, but depending on how it works, is just a turning point for the Ravens, maybe in the wrong direction. And, you know, I don't really know. I mean, after listening to the outside perspective, you know, I thought Harbaugh was good for life, but I don't know. Maybe there's there's a fire under him that's lighting up a little bit, kind of like how, you know, we've expressed feelings towards Tomlin a bit. So it'll be interesting to see the aftermath of another Steelers loss.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, we're going to see him again at some point, and if the Steelers find a way to beat him again, then I don't know what you do at that point. Because at that point, that pretty much locks up the AFC North for the Steelers, and hopefully that's the case. Hopefully we're talking about that come a few weeks down the road. But then you do have to question, all right, what are you going to make of John Harbaugh, who can't beat the Steelers in the games that really matter? And, I mean, it might cost him in the division. It might cost him a good seed. It might cost him a whole lot of stuff. So, I mean, it'll be interesting to see what happens later on. Now, I do want to talk about the offense a little bit because I'm a little bit conflicted. Russ, honestly, I think he had a little too much dip on his chip early on in the game. I don't think he was content with just being normal in a way. I think he had his eyes tunnel visioned all the way down the field way too long. And that led to, I think, 4 sacks in the first. Was it all in the first half?
It felt like it. I don't know the exact number, but there was a ton.
Yeah, so Russ, by the end of the game, had 205 yards. He was 23 for 36, and a lot of those incompletions came in the first half. And I did notice a very distinct difference when they came out of the locker room at halftime. They did simplify things a good bit, and I think maybe that was Arthur Smith kind of knocking some sense into Russ, saying, hey, like, your eyes are looking downfield, but you've got checkdowns that are wide open. I mean, Najee, I think, had 4 catches for about 30 yards in the game. He was very good in the passing game, and he was there a lot. And you know why? Because the Ravens played 2 high safeties, which I said that they would do. And the interesting thing about it is, though, Mike Williams hardly ever saw the field this game, and they still played 2 high safeties.
Well, it was very interesting, and it caused me to have a little bit of concern of the offense as a whole, because, you know, this is the worst pass defense in the league, and our passing game, especially in the first half, was not good at all. So it was very concerning. However, we ran the ball really well. Like, shout out to Najee, shout out to Jalen Warren. They both had great games. But to your point, I agree. Like, Russ was, I think his first look was always downfield. Where can I throw that rainbow ball? And then it was like, oh my gosh, there's a guy in my face. I got to run around. And I think that, you know, in the second half, we definitely adjusted. And we drove the ball down the field 2, maybe 3 times in the second half, which was good to see. You know, unfortunately, just not being able to get in the end zone. And the turnover that Russell Wilson threw, I'm a little conflicted about because, I mean, how did Darnell Washington just needs to jump, and he's got that ball for a touchdown. Like, I think that, like, obviously, you know, initially it's like, oh, Russ, like, why'd you throw that? I genuinely don't think it was a bad decision. It's your tallest guy in the whole field, and if he just leaps like an inch, he's going to catch that ball. So I think that it wasn't really a bad decision, especially because he was scrambling, and I'm hopeful, but just a little concerned at how ineffective our passing game was for most of the game due to that. This isn't like a normal Ravens defense. Like, this pass defense is horrendous, and our passing offense wasn't that good. So it's a little concerning.
Here's what I make of the Ravens defense. I don't think the metrics matter coming into a game like this. I think this game is always destined to be 18 to 16, 16 to 13. I think that, I mean, we both had pretty high scoring games in our predictions, and I think I predicted 37 to 24. I mean, neither team got to 20. So, I mean, I think Ravens Steelers is just a lock to be a low scoring game, no matter how bad the defenses actually are or how good the offenses actually are. Because, I mean, you could make the argument that both of the offenses were better than years past and that the defenses were both worse than years past. And again, I think that just the makeup, the molecular makeup of Ravens Steelers, it's always going to be a low scoring game, which it's nice to know that we can win these low scoring games because we have been scoring a lot of points recently, and to be able to eke out a win with 6 field goals from Boz, I think is huge. And on that Darnell Washington play, I kind of disagree with you there. In the context of the game, you take the 3 points, you go up 8. I don't like throwing just a lollipop throw into the end zone. I mean, it was only Washington. There were 4 Ravens around him. So even if he does get up, like, I don't like the prospect of that throw, if I'm being honest. And maybe we disagree on this, but I think that was a very unwelcome throw, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think that I can definitely, I totally understand that perspective. I think that maybe he, lofted it a little more than he thought he was going to. But I think that, overall, I don't necessarily dislike the choice because I'm thinking throwing it to that guy. And there were a lot of Ravens around, but I think only one of them were really close enough to make a play, that was right behind him. And I would be thinking, all right, I think it's a 75% chance that this guy is going to either catch it or drop it. So I do agree, you play a little more conservative, take the points, but I don't necessarily put that on Russ. But, yeah, it'll be interesting to see how the offense responds. And I do agree with also saying that these are just how these games go. This is just how Ravens-Steelers play football. And it'll be interesting to see how our offense bounces back. Kind of going, not back to the defense, but just one person on the defense in particular that I think we need to see have a big performance soon is Minkah Fitzpatrick, because I'm a little concerned after this week. He hasn't, what was the stat? He hasn't had a pick since 2022, 21?
Might as well be 1995 at this point.
Exactly. So that's really concerning because he used to be the number 1 ball hawk in the league for 3 years. And now, he hasn't had a pick in forever. And there was multiple plays where he got burned by Mark Andrews. And it was just him and Mark, and he beat him, just straight up. And it's Mark Andrews is Mark Andrews, but you're Minkah Fitzpatrick. I think we need to see a little step up in play with him. Who knows? I'm hoping, fingers crossed, first interception in 2 years. Hopefully against the Browns, he gets his first pick in forever.
I will say I agree with you to an extent, but I will say that his value, I don't think, is diminished in a whole lot of ways because he did save 2 touchdowns in this game. He had a shoestring tackle on Derrick Henry, who was already running full speed, and on that Mark Andrews play that you're actually talking about, there was nobody left. He got beat, but Minkah made up the ground to make the tackle, and Andrews would have been gone for 6 at that point too. So, yes, as far as a safety goes, it's a bit unconventional, but I think within his role that the Steelers have kind of induced him into this season at least, and maybe last year, maybe not as much last year, but most definitely this year, I think he's fulfilling his role, honestly, and I think that interception is going to come, and when it does, it's going to be in a big spot. So as far as it goes, I'm okay with how he's been playing just because the scheme is a little bit different. He's not playing center field necessarily. He's kind of, he was going with Mark Andrews on that play. So, he's kind of playing like a cornerback in a way, just, not right on the ball and press coverage. So I'm okay with it. But I do agree that I think we're going to need to see one at some point.
Yeah. And I do. I get those. I remember, now that you mentioned it, that tackle against Derrick Henry was awesome. That was an insane tackle, and I still obviously love Minka. Still one of my favorites. I just think for him being an all-pro perspective, like making some splash plays, I just kind of missed that Minka. But is there anything else about the Ravens game that you wanted to point out?
I do want to say a couple of things about the special teams, and two people in specific. We're going to start with not the one that you think I'm going to say, Corliss Waitman. He had a heck of a game punting, and the field position game, I think, really helped us win this week because with the fact that we weren't getting into the end zone in our red zone trips, and the fact that Boswell kicked 3 50-plus yarders in the game, that field position battle was won by Corliss Waitman, and I think that's a huge aspect of this week, and I don't think it can go understated how important he has been, even if it hasn't been a very forefront role this season for the Steelers. And then, obviously, again, Chris Boswell, 6 for 6, 3 field goals over 50 yards. And after the game, I don't know if you saw this, but Justin Tucker was blaming the field conditions from the Pitt-Clemson game on Saturday for the reason that he missed 2 of those field goals. I mean, I think that you understand the thing that's wrong with that. I mean, what's wrong with that statement?
Well, you got another kicker that goes 6 for 6, and right. 2 of them are plus 50. So you kind of, I mean, oh boy, that's some flaws in your logic right there.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how much you can really. That argument means nothing. The argument means absolutely nothing. So
especially because you've been missing kicks all year. Like, this isn't like our field. This is like, oh, you're not that good this year.
Yeah. And the thing is, too, I think we just witnessed the transfer of the crown to Chris Boswell of the greatest kicker in football. Because Justin Tucker, for all this time, has been the greatest kicker in football and arguably, by people's standards, the greatest kicker in history. Meanwhile, Chris Boswell is out here nailing 50-yarders in the hardest stadium to kick in. And he's doing it with regularity and with precision. The only kick he's missed this season was from 62 yards at the open end of the stadium, which is practically impossible to kick in. So, Chris Boswell, you are now the greatest kicker in the league. I don't want to hear about Jake Elliott. I don't want to hear about Justin Tucker. I don't want to hear about anybody. It is Chris Boswell.
No, I completely agree. I love Chris Boswell. I was watching it with 3 of my friends, all of whom, one's a Saints fan, one's Dolphins, one's Eagles, and Justin Tucker missed those early ones, and like Boswell was making these long ones, and I was standing up. I was like, who's the best kicker in the league? Like, who's the best? Like, it ain't Tucker. And we take so much pride in Chris Boswell, and he's just so awesome.
I mean, he needs a statue at this point. And the crazy thing is, too, so I was by myself watching this game, and I never sat down the entire game. I stood up the whole game. I didn't sit. I was standing watching the TV the entire time because it's Ravens Steelers. I can't sit down for this. But the funny thing is, I took my eyes off the TV whenever Chris Boswell was lining up to kick because he's just automatic. It's just a given that he's going to make it.
I literally, like, when they would line him up to kick, I'd get on my phone. I'm like, commercial break. Like, that's so funny.
That's what I would do. I would literally go to text you guys because I wouldn't text you guys during the drives. And then whenever Chris Boswell gets up, I would be like, oh man, another couple bad throws from Russ or something like that. And meanwhile, Boswell is making a 57-yarder, with me not even watching the TV. He's that automatic. There's not a single kicker in the league that induces those types of emotions. It is all Chris Boswell.
Yeah, and having 2 games with 6 field goals in a 10-game stretch is crazy.
And he has 3 in his career, one of which was a playoff game, and he now has the most of which in NFL history.
And in that playoff game, those were all the points we got, and we won.
Yeah.
So Chris Boswell won us a playoff game.
He's won us 3 games almost single-handedly in the course of his career. So, hey, Chris Boswell is effectively my GOAT. He might be my next jersey. I said that a while back, but I mean it's boiling up a little bit. We're getting close to that point.
Yeah, let's see if he can kick us to the Super Bowl. That'd be pretty crazy.
That'd be pretty awesome. Maybe he'll make 7 in a game and get us, what is that, 21 points or something like that?
Yeah.
That'd be pretty awesome. All right, let's move into this Browns week. it's a short week, and I'm a little nervous. What do you think?
I'm very glad you said that, because I've been telling my friends, like, walking around, I am extremely nervous. We have 3 full days. This is coming off of, like, the most important week of the year, where we spend all our time focusing on that, planning on that. All these guys are at a physical and emotional high playing this Ravens game. We're trying to come down, but we don't have the same amount of time to rest. And not only are we playing Cleveland, we're going to Cleveland, which just stinks. And, the Browns aren't horrible, but obviously they're not, like, great or anything. I just, rivalry game. We're in Cleveland. Only 3 full days to prepare. I'm very nervous. This is lined up for a perfect trap game.
Here's the thing. I wouldn't say that the Browns aren't horrible, but I think the word for them is volatile. I think that they can strike at any point. We saw that against the Ravens. I think at a base level, they're abysmal, and they're a team to be kicked to the curb. And if we're on our game, then we will kick them to the curb. However, the Jameis Winston experience, Mr. 30-30, you can either get 4 touchdowns, 400 yards in a game, or you can get 102 yards with 3 interceptions in a game. And he's coming off of a game where he honestly lit up the Saints secondary. He had a really good completion percentage. I think he threw well over 40 times. He had well over 300 yards. I think he might have even pushed 400. I don't know if that's completely true or not. But I'm telling you, the Jameis Winston experience is a scary fire to play with. And the Steelers, I think that Mike Tomlin, I listened to his press conference not too long ago. It seems like that they aren't even watching film from this Ravens game. It seems like they are already on to the Browns, which is encouraging to me, knowing that they're already having their eyes set on what's next.
Yeah. No, I do like that. I like that, you're just moving right along. It's what you have to do this week. And I agree. We just have to prey on Jameis Winston. Even when the Browns beat the Ravens, the play before the touchdown that won them the game should have been a game-ending interception by Kyle Hamilton. So we just got to capitalize, because that's going to happen. With Jameis Winston, there's going to be those passes where it's like, go get that. And we just got to capitalize on it, and we got to capitalize on his mistakes. And honestly, their defense is sus. I think that, they were – I don't really know entirely what to think their defense. I think that it's, not as good as, former years. But we'll see. I hope that our offense has a good bounce-back game. And, yeah, I think that, everything's lined up that we can take care of business. But it just makes me nervous because of all the other external factors.
Yeah, this is one of those where you look at it on paper and you check it off as a Steelers win. But the problem is games aren't played on paper, and you actually have to play this game in a hostile environment at the Dawg Pound. I was looking at tickets for this game because I'm only 2 hours. I was only 2 hours. You were looking at 2?
I did, because I'm leaving this Friday for Thanksgiving, and I was like, oh, do I leave Thursday? And but I was like, no, I'll just leave Friday.
No, you wouldn't catch me at a Browns Steelers game, especially wearing some Steelers stuff. I think that's just a death wish. But you kind of talking about the defense a little bit. They have 5 different players that have 3 or more sacks. So their defensive line has done the job this year. And Myles Garrett, talk about him what you will. I mean, he's had a pretty good year. He's got 7 sacks. And the thing about it, in Tomlin's press conference, he said, Myles Garrett wrecking the game is not a possibility, it is a probability, which I love that because he's giving that respect to Myles Garrett because you understand. I mean, our offensive line had a game against the Ravens. I don't think it was an awful game. I don't think it was a great game, but it was a game against the Ravens. And, their pass rush is good. They had, I think Owe was his name. He had a really nice game. I think he had 3 sacks. So you get a guy like Myles Garrett, Okawaru, something like that. He also has 3+ sacks as well. And their secondary hasn't made explosive plays, but when you have a defensive line like that, it can kind of bail out a secondary on occasion. And again, going back to how Russ operated this week, if Russ is getting tunnel visioned early on like he did against the Ravens, it might be an opportunity for the Browns to feast on that, which I hope that Arthur Smith would adjust and say, okay, game plan for this game, let's start out just making these simple completions. Let's check down to Najee. Let's make a 4-yard completion, and let's meticulously walk down the field. That's kind of my idea coming into this game.
No, I completely agree. I think that with Myles Garrett, I was just talking to my friend who's a Browns fan, and TJ Watt and Myles Garrett sound like the same guy because, everybody's double teaming Myles Garrett just like they're double teaming Watt, and his stats aren't as insane as they normally are, but that's because they're opening up doors for other guys. Like you said, with other people having 3 or more sacks. And I agree. I think we take what the defense gives you, we run the ball down their throats, and I think we'll do just fine. The O-line had an okay game. However, I'm a little sick of Broderick Jones. One more personal, unsportsmanlike conduct penalty. I mean, he is just costing us too much, and it was genuinely because it was Ravens Steelers. It was fun to see that almost after every single play there was almost a fight. But with Broderick Jones, he just kept talking, kept going. It's like I was, clenching my fists like, oh my gosh, you're going to drop penalty. Stop it. And he has been costing us 10 yards after 10 yards after 10 yards, and I'm getting a little sick of it.
I'm going to be honest. I think that was a stupid call on him. I forget which Raven was involved, but the Raven was the one that was instigating everything, and Jones was yapping, but he put his hands up and he was walking away from it, and they penalized him for it too. That should not have been an offsetting penalty. That should have been solely on the Ravens, and I will die on that hill. But at the same time, again, I don't know. I'm not as concerned about that as you are. I do think that he needs to get a little bit better in his actual play. His yapping is whatnot, but I think he's gotten better, and then he kind of gets worse, and then he gets better, and then he gets worse. So it's kind of the roller coaster of Broderick Jones right now, and it's just a matter of, okay, let's find a middle ground, and let's just stay consistent. Because if you have an offensive lineman that is struggling to find consistency, you just got to get to a base level. Because offensive line play, I think, is all about consistency. Would you agree to that?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, you gotta find a way to, have those games where you don't allow a pressure, which he did against Washington, and then you come back in this game and it's he got beat several times, but a lot of guys did get beat several times in this game. So I'm not as concerned as you are, but it is definitely a weak link on this line.
Yeah, I'd agree. I think it's just, even the unsportsmanlike, it's hard because it's a Ravens game, and I don't really remember seeing that play, so I'll take your word for it. But he had at least one, I think 2 holding penalties, and it's just one of them was on a really good Najee run. And so he's just getting a little on my nerves where it's every week something's going on where I'm like, oh my goodness, Broderick Jones. But I am excited to see us next week or this Thursday. A little nervous, just kind of what we've all been said. So do you want to go first for game prediction or do you want me to go first?
I feel like you always go first and I always kind of come back after you. So I'll go first this week. Okay. Honestly, I think that this one's going to be closer than we want it to be. Again, the Jameis Winston experience. You put the little trademark sign next to it. I got that on my notes. Jameis Winston experience trademark. You might get 4 touchdowns, 400 yards, or you might get 102 yards and 3 interceptions. I think there might be a little bit of a middle ground this week. He obviously, again, had a really good week against the Saints. They just didn't score a lot of points. And that's kind of been the problem all season for the Browns is they can move the ball a little bit, but they can't score. And their field goal kicking has also been just really bad. And the weather for this game is going to be awful. It's going to be 40 degrees and rainy. So
that was another reason why I decided, maybe I just go home Friday and not go to the game.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm with you there. So I think this could be an ugly game. I'm a little concerned about Russ, but I do trust Arthur Smith to adjust him in a way. And I hope that that's the case. So with that, I'm going to say the final score to this one is 23-21 Steelers win. in a very, very close affair. I don't know how it ends. I don't think it's necessarily like a game-winning field goal or something like that, but I think that it's going to be close down to like the last couple of minutes of the fourth quarter.
Okay. Interesting. I think that the first half is going to be extremely tight. I think that it was just going to go back and forth a little bit. Both offenses maybe a little slow. But I think in the second half, I think our run game is going to work them into submission, and we're going to do what we want to do with them. And I think that I think it's going to be close for a while. And I think that when I say this score, you might be a little surprised, but the last touchdown or field goal would be in garbage time. So I think it would look closer than the score suggests. But I'd go 27-13 victory. That it would be close most of the game, but we'd just be able to outlast them towards the end.
Okay. I can see that. I think if Najee has a good game, not that he didn't have a good game this last week, I think he had some hard runs and a couple got taken back from some penalties, some really big plays that he had. Again, with the conditions of the field, it might be one of those games where we run it up the gut. And again, if that stuff is working, then the play action's probably going to work, and we might get that big play that, we got one from George Pickens this last week down the sideline. George Pickens had a great game. I don't know if he has as good of a game this coming week, but again, I think Najee's kind of your key to victory this week, as well as Jaylen Warren. I am so sick of the Najee runs to the outside because Jaylen Warren fits that bid so much better. I think I texted you guys the 3 best words in sports: pitch to Warren. Whenever I hear Ian Eagles say pitch to Warren, it's just an automatic 15 yards. So yeah. I think if you take Najee to the outside out of the playbook and you keep it Warren to the outside and you let Najee do the work in the middle, I think you got a recipe for success.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think that if our run game does well, kind of like you said, I think we'll take care of business. And, I'll definitely be sitting down anxious until the game's over. Yeah,
it's one of those where you would hate to get a little too excited for this one. And again, a short week, it's kind of hard to kind of sit on your win against the Ravens for so long. But I think Mike Tomlin has the right idea of, hey, let's not worry about this Ravens stuff. We can look at that film later. Let's figure out what's going on with the Browns and let's go give it to them. And here's the other thing. I said this several weeks ago, and there's one amendment to the thing that I said. I said that Tomlin doesn't have the chance to lose to a 2-win team for the rest of the season. The caveat to that is that it is the Cleveland Browns that he could lose to. Now, I'll ask you this question as we close. If the Steelers were to lose this game, does it negate everything that they've already done this season? Is it possible to lose this game and still be okay with that outcome?
To me, not really. To me, it would be like, so we're the same Mike Tomlin Steelers that can win a bunch of games against 2 teams that aren't that good, 2 teams that are probably playoff teams, and we just, won them tough. And then we go and lose to a 2-win team, which, happened a lot. Yeah, I think that it would be very concerning. I get it's a rival. I get we're away. I get it's a short week. But it's a 2-win Browns team. And you're the Pittsburgh Steelers. You just can't lose to them.
Okay. I somewhat agree with that. And I think the only difference that I would say is that, yes, it is a rivalry game. It is the Browns. And, the days of beating up on the Browns are over. We play them tight now. And that's kind of how it usually is. I think we lost one last year to them. Yeah. So, and again, Kenny Pickett offense, whatever. Russell Wilson, hopefully, Russell Wilson is obviously an upgrade. So that's one huge thing. And yeah, I'm towing that line. I don't know if I'm completely okay, throw in the towel if we lose to the Browns, but at the same time, it's you better not, Yeah,
and I think that I'm not necessarily throwing the towel, but I'm just all right, so we have the same ceiling that we've had over the past few years. I feel it's the same team, looks a little different, our team last year beat the Ravens 18-10. So, I don't know if that really proves that we're any different just by being the Ravens, because we're 8-1 in this last stretch. So I think this week would be very comforting or very concerning.
Okay. I think very rightly so. It's a big week, and if you come out of it with a win, then, you move on, and you get a long stretch of time to kind of reset after that, and I don't even know who we're playing. That's kind of my mindset, too. It seems like Mike Tomlin's like, all right, we got this next game coming up, and that's a good mindset. I like that, and I'm appreciative of Mike Tomlin in that regard, and the way that he's been carrying himself in the press conferences, it's been very indicative of that mindset. So I'm all for it.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. Definitely like the idea of just being focused on the game at hand, and let's not worry about who's next and who's after that. Let's focus on right now and this week and do what we need to do.
Yep, absolutely. Well, this episode will be out very soon. It doesn't matter to you. I know what time it is where I'm at on what day it is, but it'll be up very soon from the time that we are actually recording this. And as always, the Boardman Black and Gold podcast is sponsored by Zecca Enterprises, crafting furniture solutions in northwestern Pennsylvania. Call 910-777-3871 to learn how we can help you with all your furniture problems and make solutions for them. Big week for the Steelers. Hopefully we come back after a Here We Go Steelers win. We will also have that Outside Perspective episode up very soon. We had a little bit of a delay with it. It was originally going to be up at the same time as this one with the short week, but we will have that up very soon after you guys are listening to this, probably on Tuesday night, Wednesday morning, sometime around then. But hey, big week, David. Let's go out. Let's get a dub. And if you do end up going to the game, hey, just let me know and maybe I'll think about it.
All right. Sounds good. I will definitely keep you posted.
All right, everybody. Thanks for listening to the Boardman Black and Gold podcast. Zane and David, big week for the Steelers heading into the Dawg Pound, trying to beat the 2-8 Browns, 2-9 Browns, 2-whatever Browns. They have 2 wins. Mike Tomlin needs a win this week. Thanks for listening, and as always, here we go Steelers.